very righteous, pious individuals to harm the body, self-harm, to exile oneself, to fast, to sit on a mound of red ants.
That were Jews?
No, the ants were not Jewish. Yes. It was a Jewish practice to sit on to all these things, to sleep on the bench in the synagogue and not in a bed. There was one individual who slept on a bench in the synagogue for decades. At the end of his life,
Didn't like his wife.
I don't know if he was married or not married. I don't know those details. But I do know they said like this. At the end of his life, he was on his deathbed and he said that I regret all of those years, let's say 40 years sleeping on the bench, I would give it up for stronger health. He felt like maybe that had affected his health in a negative way. I would give up whatever merit that achieved for additional health for one more day to put on tefillin, one more day to pray. I would give up all of the merit, whatever it was, for sleeping on the bench. To which others said it takes a guy to sleep 40 years on a bench in the synagogue to appreciate one day of putting on tefillin. But it's kind of like a circular conversation. But here's the point. There were practices of many where they would self-exile, sometimes even some Chassidic greats would self-exile. There's a famous story, which we're not going to get into right now, of Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk and Reb Zusha of Anipoli. They were brothers, and they used to go around. You know the story? They used to go around and travel. One time they were both arrested and imprisoned. And they wanted to pray, and they couldn't pray because of the bucket in the room. We know this one?
Yes.
The famous bucket story?
No.
I didn't intend on saying it, but now I'm halfway through, might as well say it. So these two brothers, they would go around, they would leave the comforts of home and self-exile, part of like breaking the body. And one time they were caught up and arrested for, hanging around without seemingly any purpose. So they thought they were criminals, so they threw them in together with a gang of criminals into a holding cell. And it's part of the adventure, there's no other better option, right? You're going with the flow. And at some point, it comes time for the afternoon prayers, and Rebbe Elimelech, one of the brothers, begins crying. And his brother says, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "We can't pray in this room." Why not? Because there's a bucket, and the bucket is it's the bucket of.
It's the people who called a slop jar back in the day.
It's the toilet, right? So they had a toilet, and you can't pray. You don't pray to God in a bathroom in a toilet, in the presence of waste. So he's crying. I've never missed a mincha. I've never missed an afternoon prayer in my life, and now I'm faced with the prospect of missing the first one. So he's crying. His brother says to him, "Look, the same God that tells you to pray under normal circumstances tells you that when there's this type of thing, this unclean item, so you don't pray. So usually praying is doing God's will. Today, in this context, not praying is doing God's will. So don't get all bent out of shape." At which point they both begin rejoicing. Rebbe Elimelech begins rejoicing. Now he has an opportunity to do God's will by not praying. And they begin dancing around the bucket, singing a Chassidic melody. Maybe it was a medley also. A medley of melodies. And the guards come over. What's going on? These Chassid-looking fellows are dancing around the bucket. No having fun in this cell. Take out the bucket. They take out the bucket, and Reb Zusha tells his brother, now it's time to pray. And so what's the point? I don't know. But the point here is that people had the practice of self-exiling and harming the body. And the truth is, the Baal Shem Tov instituted a new practice, although again, Rebbe Elimelech and Reb Zusha were disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, so certainly they were within the Chassidic tradition. But nonetheless, the Baal Shem Tov taught us a different perspective on the body. The body is not second rate, it's not less than, it's not ugly, dirty, demeaning, all of those negative things. The body itself has something precious, and today we explore that so that we can have a different perspective, a different image about the bodies that we possess. So let's jump into our discussion. We're going to start with the context of lashes. So open up the Chumash to page 1278. This week's Torah portion is Teitzei. I should have mentioned that at the top. And the Torah portion has many mitzvot. In fact, it has a total...
1278 or 1287? Chapter 25.
Let's see. I think you're right. 1280. Let's see. Yes, 1287. Good. My memory did not serve me correctly.
I don't count pages usually.
This is true. This is true. I try to memorize the page to be more efficient, and I almost got it right. All right, 1287. Administering lashes. Okay. Here we go. So, but before we do that, so the Torah portion, Teitzei or Teitzei, has a total of 74 mitzvot. 74. Understand this. There are there are 613 in the whole 5 books of Moses, amongst 53 parshiot, 53 Torah portions. Okay, this one has 74, which is more than a tenth of all the mitzvot, of all the commandments in the Bible. This Torah portion has 74, which is a huge number. So one after the other, you can look through the pages of this week's Torah portion and see all the different headings or headers, and it's interesting, it's fascinating. But right now, we're talking about administering lashes. So, Sindrine, would you like to get us started? Chapter 25, verse number 1, 1287, where it says, if there is a quarrel.
If there is a quarrel between two men who come to court to be judged, the innocent one will be acquitted and the guilty one will be condemned. If the guilty person from a court case is liable for lashes, the judge should make him bend over and flog him with 1/3 of the total number of 39 lashes he deserves on his front and 2/3 on his back. He should flog him with almost 40 lashes, but he must not give more, for if he give him a lot more lashes than this, your brother will be degraded before your eyes.
That's it. That's the story about the lashes. All right. And I gave multiple disclaimers. I tried. This is not something that we are in practice to do here in the United States of America today. No. Israel does not go by Torah law. It goes. Some things are inspired by, but it's not a halachic-based system. And in general, you can't give lashes unless there's a Sanhedrin, unless there's a legitimate Jewish court as ordained generationally through a very unique process of ordination. Does not exist. No, does not exist.
It has to be
unbroken chain, etc., which is broken today, and has been for many years. So, but what is this notion of lashes? So it's basically a form of physical punishment by which the offender is ideally rehabilitated. Well, they need to be rehabilitated after the lashes, but by which, so first of all, there's an assessment made as to what is reasonable for this person to receive. And it's given, it says, by someone whose wisdom is greater than their strength. So it's not meant to be something that's very, very, torturous. And there's a certain number that can't be, you cannot go more than 39, but you can go certainly less than 39. And that's what was done. Look, I can't. I'm not going to sit here tonight and say lashes are the best way to deal with crime. But I will say this. When we talk about the criminal justice system, you would ask somebody who's sitting behind bars for 20 years, 25 years, and ask them, given the choice, would you rather sit for 20 years or have this experience in which your pain tolerance is taken into consideration with medical professionals, etc., and be done with it within a matter of minutes? What would you choose? I don't know if everyone would choose the current system. So who's to say which is more humane or inhumane? I'm not arguing for the humaneness. What I am saying is that this is within Torah law, and we can maybe have a glimpse and understanding of what it is if we look at perhaps contrasting with other forms of criminal justice forms. But here's the big idea. The big idea here is that we find this notion of lashes as being something that would fall under the category of physical punishment along the lines of capital punishment. In other words, there's two forms within Jewish law. There are two types of punishment that are bodily or physical in nature. There's lashes, which does not and cannot, must not actually harm the person to the point where they lose their life. That's immoral. And then there's capital punishment, which is intended to end a person's life. These are the two physical punishments as contained in the Torah. Now we know that in Jewish law, guilt or innocence, when it comes to a criminal case and other such cases, it's only established by the presence of two witnesses. Two witnesses who testify that they saw this individual commit this crime, that they had previously warned this individual not to commit the crime, that person heard the warning, acknowledged it, and defied it by acting in defiance of that warning, etc. And the witnesses to be kosher witnesses defined in Jewish law extensively, and the other criteria that have to fall into place in order for that to happen. What happens if an individual goes along and the individual says, "I confess I did the crime," and either it's a capital case, it's a crime that would deserve, if you will, or induce a capital punishment, or this lashes punishment. So now you have an absence of two witnesses, but you have the individual himself or herself saying, "I did it. I committed the crime," or "I committed the offense." So what happens then? So famously, and if you took the course Crime and Consequence, you know this, or maybe you know this outside of that course as well, famously Jewish law says confession, when it comes to criminal law, confession is inadmissible. You cannot convict, you cannot prosecute, you cannot put forth punishment, you cannot punish based on confession. Now understand this. There are many rationales for why this is so. We're going to cite two of them. Maimonides, Rambam, and the Radvaz, Rabbi David ibn Zimra. Two of the Rishonim, the early medieval Jewish giants of scholarship. Both give different reasons, but I'll tell you one interesting implication of this non-confessional system. Right, Judaism's not into confession. Right, I'll tell you one benefit. You ready for this benefit? You've de-incentivized torture to obtain confession. Are you with me on that? How many governments and militaries have tortured people in order to gain a confession? Well, maybe a military would be to gain intelligence, which would still work. I'm not condoning torture. But how many legal systems have forced confessions even today? The whole pressure of a plea bargain, of a deal, confess to this crime or else. Now, we know for a fact, based on as much as we can know, based on DNA coming back, based on the fact that the real person eventually, the real offender, years later says, "Oh, by the way, I did it," and other circumstances, we know that people confess to crimes that they did not commit. You might say that's impossible. Why would somebody ever confess to a crime they didn't commit? If they didn't commit it, why would they say they did it? There are many rationales for this. There are psychological rationales for it. But one tactic and technique that's used is the pressure of a deal, where the prosecutors say, "Look, we have evidence. We know you did it, and we have everything lined up. And if you go to trial, you're going to be put away for life. So, however, if you spare us the expense of the prosecution and just say you did it and sign this piece of paper confessing to it, we'll only give you 5 to 10. In 10 years, you'll be out, start your life again. You want to roll the dice? We have a strong case. We have an ironclad case. You're going away for life." Somebody who doesn't have a lot of coin to bankroll a solid defense is facing the prospect of life in prison. And they may take a deal and confess. Guess what? In Jewish law, confession is simply inadmissible. If you sign your name and say that you did it, that's nice. The court still cannot punish based on confession. It requires two witnesses. Now, there are other provisions. If the court really believes a person is dangerous, there are things that can be done. extra legal measures, etc. But within the legal standard of Judaism, confession is inadmissible. Does that make sense? It disincentivizes or de-incentivizes, maybe I said it the wrong way. Yeah, there's no incentive to pressure, coerce, torture, right? Administer lashes to get a waterboard, to get a confession for prosecution purposes, because you can't prosecute based on that anyway in Jewish law. But what's the rationale? So let's take a look at text. I believe it's text 3, maybe text 2, text 4 actually in our books or the handouts. Page 199. This is Rambam Maimonides Marnin. You got it? You look on? Thanks. Text 4, Rambam says the following, 199.
It is a scriptural decree that the court does not execute a person or have him lashed because of his own admission. Instead, punishments are given on the basis of the testimony of 2 witnesses.
Rambam says that a person is not executed or given lashes. There's no physical corporal punishment based on self-admission, based on admission, confession. Rather, it requires 2 witnesses. What's the rationale? What does he say? What does Rambam say? What's it based on?
We've got two witnesses.
Gzerat HaKatuv. It's a decree of the Torah. There's no rationale given. Exactly what Chazan Ben said. The Torah tells us, Al pi shnayim edim, o shlosha edim yakum davar. A fact is established on the basis of the testimony of 2 or 3 kosher witnesses, absent of which a person is not punished in this way. So Rambam says, you know what the rationale is? Neither do I. The Torah says, and that's the way it is. We can come up with something with rationales, but at its core, the Torah tells us this is the way it is. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Were there procedures in place to make sure that the witnesses were legitimate?
Oh yeah.
Rabbi, is this?
They were grilled and cross-examined. You have to know this also about Jewish criminal law, is that it's a very different system than our system of law. Our system of law is adversarial in nature, where you have 2 sides, and the prosecution is trying to establish a presumption of guilt, let's say amongst the judges or the jury, and the defense is trying to poke a hole in that case. The defense doesn't have to prove innocence. The defense just has to prove that the other guy didn't do a good job. So it's adversarial in nature, where the 2 sides are fighting really against each other and not about establishing facts as much as they're trying to knock each other down in a sense. Whereas the Jewish system, the Torah system of law, is, first of all, there's no juries. It's professional judges who know the law and have a sense of how to sniff out the truth. And the judges, and the whole system is an inquisitorial system, where the 2 parties stand before the court, and the judges examine the situation. The judges say, tell me what happened, and the witnesses come forth, all right, examine, cross-examine in separate rooms. Give me the story, your story, give me your story. They ask them very specific questions to validate the truth, to verify the truth, and to verify that they're not in cahoots with each other, and ask them details and questions that only if it was true they would know. Now, can you ever guarantee that something is 100% true? Human beings are human beings, but it was it was designed in a way that it should be very conscious of making sure that the truth is determined. Now, Rambam says it's a decree of the verse. Radvaz gives a rationale. Text number 5. And again, it's not at odds with Rambam. It's not that Maimonides would disagree with the Radvaz. The Rambam is saying, Maimonides is saying at its core, it's a scriptural decree. The Radvaz says, I have a logical thing that we can add on to it, a rationale. It's like kosher. Ultimately, kosher, what determines what's kosher, what's not? It's a scriptural decree. Torah says, this you can eat, this you shouldn't eat. Fine. But once we have it, we can figure out some benefits. Not that the benefits are necessarily what make it kosher or not kosher, but once we have it, we can ascribe positive virtues to it. Similar in this case, text number 5, but here's a positive virtue. Allison.
It is possible to offer a rationale, inasmuch as a person's life is not his or her own possession, rather the possession of God, as it is stated, souls are unto me. Their own admission does not accomplish anything against the body, as it does not belong to them. Lashes are half of death, and as such, a person's own admission cannot incur lashes.
Thanks. The Radva says like this: life belongs to Hashem. Life belongs to God. And therefore, since life belongs to God, a person is not legally allowed to give up their life, except in the rare circumstances where the Torah obligates us to give up our lives. In cases of Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name, when it comes to the three cardinal sins, if you will, of Judaism, aside from that, a person has to take care of their life and is not allowed to, on their own, give up their life. And therefore, the Randva says, for a person to confess in a capital case, and for that confession to be taken as proof of the commission of that act, and for a person to be executed based on their confession, would mean that the person is in essence forfeiting their own life, and a person is not allowed to do that. Now the court is empowered, after observing all the evidence and determining the facts, the court is given the power by the Torah to determine when it is that a person's life, that the party's life has ended, and thus the capital punishment has to be applied. But the individual themselves has not been given by Torah that permission. So a person is not allowed to forfeit their life. Therefore, they cannot confess in a capital case. When it comes to a case of lashes, what does he say? He has to massage a little bit. What does he say about the lashes? It's half death. Okay, so it's not exactly death, but it's pain, and therefore you're harming the body. So therefore, he says it also gets lumped in that category. Person does not have the right to do that to themselves. No self-harm, and therefore inadmissible in court.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is there any case in which someone that's convicted of a capital punishment can change it by doing whatever? Community service.
In halacha, in Jewish law, look, in Jewish law, the Talmud says that if a Sanhedrin, if a court, once in 7 years or once in 70 years, applied the capital punishment, it was considered to be a court that has blood in its hands. So, which means that it was, a murderous court, which means they were bloodthirsty, which means that in all likelihood, it rarely ever happened, if ever, that a person, that a crime and the criminal would have satisfied all of the requirements that were required in Jewish law in that process in order for that capital punishment to be applied. So did it ever happen? How often did it happen? It seems like it was very, very infrequent that it ever happened. If it was applied, could the person get a do-over, a mulligan, some sort of other way out? I don't know. If they were able to pass through all those checkpoints of outs and still get up to that point, I think at that point, probably not. I think all the other options would be exhausted up to that point, and that would be it. But look, in Jewish law it says that in Jewish thought and philosophy it says that when capital punishment would be theoretically applied, it would be a kapara, it would be a cleansing and atonement for the person, for the soul. It means that the body's mission has come to an end. The soul will live on and be cleansed through that process. So that's what it says. But the Radvaz, getting back to Radvaz, Rabbi David Ibn Zimra says that why is confession simply inadmissible? Because a person does not have control, does not have that type of jurisdiction over their own life. Life belongs to God. Only in rare instances, like a judge, a court, a bet din, a Sanhedrin has that type of ability to decide about a person. And other very, very specific examples is that permission granted, but when it comes to the individual themselves, they don't have the right to confess. The problem with this answer is it makes sense when it comes to capital punishment. But like I said before, it seems like he's kind of like massaging it into the realm of lashes. It seems like you're not giving up your life with lashes. So if the issue is that life belongs to God, okay, a person confesses to a crime that would incur lashes, they're not giving up their life. They're giving up some pain, they're giving up some comfort, and they're going to endure pain, but that's not the same. And therefore the question is, so why don't we draw a distinction and say confession is inadmissible for capital crimes, but should be admissible for crimes that would would incur lashes? Does the question make sense? Sort of? Yes?
I have another question going back to the beginning where it says, if there's a quarrel, that's not criminal. What kind of quarrel are you talking about?
Well, it means a quarrel and somebody hurts the other person or whatever, yeah. There's like an...
So like they got into a fight or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like...
It's not like we had an argument.
yeah, it's not like who's the better quarterback.
Okay.
I don't even know who I'm thinking anymore.
So
Right.
that's escalate.
Yeah. It's not a simple
So in
case.
other words, for it to have gotten there,
They-
somebody had to.
Yeah,
do
they're not
something.
giving lashes
Okay.
willy-nilly like that. Just two people got into a fight. That's it. Lashes for all y'all. I don't care. Not interested what happened. No, that's not no. Lashes were very serious punishment for serious crimes.
And was that what infrequent also?
I don't know. I would hope.
So I have a different question.
I think after that becomes a thing, it's like, well, I'm not going to do that, right?
So why does it say your brother will be degraded before your eyes? I mean, why do you want to degrade your
No,
brother?
you don't.
Okay.
That's why you can't give more than 39.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
otherwise,
Got it.
otherwise you're
That's why
gonna,
there's a
otherwise,
limit.
yes,
Because then it is degrading.
because then you're inhumane.
Okay,
Because
got
then
it.
you're beating someone
Okay.
and you're callous. The point is, you
Got
should
it.
feel empathy. You should cry as they cry, and it should be all about their rehabilitation.
That makes more sense.
The rationale here, listen, it's outside of our comfort zone. I started off the class with two disclaimers saying this will be outside of our comfort zone. What?
This is what we're.
Oh, this is the top. No, we're going to move off of this topic in a moment. Don't worry. We're going to get to more pleasant discussions. But here's the point. The point is that, okay, we got it. We already discussed it. Fine. So here's the question. The question is, why isn't it? Why don't we say that the person's confession is admissible in these cases? And so therefore we need to look at another text. And this is a very, very important text number 7, because the Radvaz told us that life doesn't belong to us. However, the Alter Rebbe in his Code of Jewish Law in text number 7 tells us that it's not just life that doesn't belong to us, our bodies don't belong to us. Sarah, please read text number 7.
It is forbidden to strike another person, even if the latter has granted permission to be struck. For a person does not have ownership over his own body whatsoever to allow himself to be struck, embarrassed, or to endure any sort of pain.
So it says in the Code of Jewish Law, and this is a version of the Code of Jewish Law authored by the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, and he says the following: Not only is it forbidden to harm to strike another person without their permission, right? To actually assault somebody, obviously that's forbidden. But even if somebody says, "No, hit me," even if they say they want, there's still a prohibition in Jewish law. After permission has been granted, still prohibited to strike that person. Why? Because they didn't have the right. They didn't have the right to get permission, because it's not their body. The person that says, "Yeah, I don't mind, hit me," that person did not have permission to say that. It's like I take someone else's Tiffany, what is it? It was Tiffany lamp vase. What is it? What are they?
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah. And I say, "You know what? I give you permission. Smash it." I can't give you permission to smash someone else's thing. I borrow your car, yeah, and I say to somebody, "No problem, you can ram right into it." Well, they said I could, yeah, but it's not yours to give away. It's not yours to allow injury. So halacha says, Jewish law says, a person cannot self-harm. Why? Because is that for you? Oh, yeah. Because one's body is not their own. It's an unbelievable teaching. It's a powerful teaching. Our bodies don't belong to us.
Does that mean you can't be boxing and wrestling?
I was thinking exactly that. Boxing, listen, I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and I'll just live stream all over the internet, but I won't stand on a soapbox and say, you know what, boxing's not okay. Why? Because even if you have willing participants, they're not allowed to. Who says you're allowed to injure yourself? Jewish law says you're not allowed to. Why do we have the impression that we're allowed to because I said yes? Who are you to say yes? Oh, it's my body. What makes it your body? Whoever told you it's your body? It belongs to Hashem.
So that you can't play football.
I was thinking that also. Now that we know about CTE and concussions and the brain damage and the shortening of life, now that we know all that, can a person, even if they say, I'm willing to take the risk. I heard anybody familiar with the sportscaster Dan Patrick? I once heard an interview. Dan Patrick was interviewing, I forget who, a retired football player. And he asked him the question, if you knew then what you know now about the dangers, concussion, etc., all the stuff that he's in the lawsuit against the NFL. They settled for like $1 billion a year or two ago, right? If you knew then what you know now, would you play? You know what he said?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was Gale Sayers.
Absolutely. Was it Gale Sayers? Yeah. Absolutely. The fame, the money, the prestige, this is it. This was his life. And what's the point? I'm not judging him. I'm just telling you according to, and I'm not saying definitively that football crosses this line into self-harm, guaranteed self-harm. I think it might, but I can't. I'm not ready to say for sure yes or no.
That's why they wear pads.
All right, but maybe because of the pads, maybe it's different, or the helmet. I'm not ruling on this now as a definitive thing. It's a good question though that we need to really think about. But I'll say this: if a person says, "I'm willing to take the risk," halacha might say in certain cases, who are you? Not yours to take the risk, to gamble. So now the question is, okay, what about bungee jumping? What about, they have now cordless bungee jumping. No, I'm kidding. That doesn't even make sense, guys. Come on. Seriously. Come on, folks. Just testing. Huh? Combat. Oh, combat's different. Combat's different. War is different. Yeah. It's different.
They say
It's different.
hit me as hard as you can.
Okay, but it's all in the context of saving lives and defending national. So I understand, but there's no way to defend if you didn't go through that training. But stam for sport, it's a different scenario. In other words, if you're just doing it for money or for sport, it's very different than doing it for self or national preservation, which is a much different thing. It's a very good question, though. Yeah.
All right. So what about sports like weightlifting, where you're like kind of tearing your muscles up and then repairing them and making them stronger? Is that also
No,
considered?
to me that sounds okay.
Okay.
Any workout. No, seriously, because you're not harming. You're building. Sometimes you have to,
You're using steroids.
Well, yeah, it's
I'm just naturally large, I promise.
Contradicts the prior example you gave, Jews sitting on a pile of ants.
right. Yes. I raised it before to say that the approach that we're going to take tonight is very different than some approaches that were taken in the past. Now, how to reconcile that, I don't know. The question is, isn't that at odds with sitting on a pile of ants? Or self-exiling? The answer is kind of, sort of. And that's why today's class is to go away from that perspective, from that mindset, and to present a different perspective where we treat the body as what it really is, which is God's. We're entrusted. It's like, imagine someone gives you, I don't know, a Rolls Royce and like delivers it with like gloves, right? And says, okay, I need you to watch it for a year until I get back. It's not yours to go, to drag race with. It's not, right? You're meant to watch. It's a deposit. Huh?
You couldn't anyway.
All right, so what's that Bugatti, whatever that car is, that's like, whatever, these cars that can go 300, 400 miles an hour, it's not yours to race. It's not yours to,
So how far do you take that? I mean, you can't do harm to
Right.
your body. What about organ donation? Is it your body or isn't it?
What about
That's it.
piercing? What
Uh-huh.
about piercing?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. All good questions. So number one, the biggest one is that which would cause death. So that's for sure, right? That's self-harm. that's irreversible, that's for sure no good. The question is, if it's less than that, where do you draw the line? That's your question. What about poking a hole in your ear? Right? Right? Is that okay? So usually halachis would say, look, if it's something that doesn't cause, I guess permanent, it kind of does cause a hole, but yeah, I guess the hole could close up and it's not a tremendous amount of pain and it's for beauty purposes, etc., then it's a bit of a different category. The question is, where do you draw that line, right? So, there are different things. Tattoos have a separate category because that the Torah speaks of specifically, but even that specificity is certain colors and certain types of the Torah specifically refers to black and refers to either letters or characters versus whatever it is. It doesn't. We can have a class on tattoos. That's a separate class. But the point is, you're asking a very good question. Where do you draw the line? But you asked something else. Organ donation. Good. That could be okay. It might not be okay under the guise of harming the body, but it could be okay under the category of saving a life. So, and saving a life would supersede other prohibitions. In Judaism, it's very important to know that even when something seems either okay or not okay, nothing exists, bless you, in a vacuum. We always have to measure, we have to take a step back and say, okay, what are the other considerations? Are there any competing considerations? And then which one would override the other? So in this case, when it comes to organ donation, assuming that it's a vital organ or something like a cornea, which provides sight, which sight is considered to be like saving a life, in those cases, not only is it okay, but it's even preferred, as assuming that it's being done in a kosher way, i.e. not killing one person to save another, which would have ramifications for heart transplantation, which is a whole body donor. That's some cryogenic stuff, right?
No, I mean
No, if you harvest all the organs out.
And
you save multiple lives.
Yeah. Okay. There's.
if you donate your body to medical research.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's that runs into other questions of the Torah says to bury the body and to keep the body with integrity. But again, if it's saving a life, saving a life is only if the danger is in front of you, but not for medical research, which will only be years later. It's a very, very involved topic, which we have to save again for a class dedicated to that. What I want to extract from text 7, which is a very key text, is the regard by which or in which we hold the body. It's not just life is God's, but the body. There's a difference between saying life or body, because life sounds like the soul. To which we ask, but lashes aren't taking the soul, so maybe it should be okay to confess to that. The point here is no. It's not just life is God's. The body is God's. Text 8a, the Rebbe connects all the dots here. 203 or 204. 203. Who are we up to? Steve.
The explanation of the matter is as follows. The soul and the vitality of a human being is entrusted to him by God on loan, but does not actually become his or her possession. As the Alter Rebbe rules, a person does not have the permission to strike his body at all. Accordingly, harming the body is not only a matter of violating the law, rather it is a violation of property because he or she has no ownership over their body. The body is God's possession, which is on loan to the person.
It's very important to see that distinction that the Rebbe just made. When a person instructs another to harm themselves, right? So it's not just a violation of the law. You can't do that. It's a property violation. It's not yours to harm. It's a different category of prohibition. The Rebbe continues to explain the distinction between this and another case, and we'll pause the text for a moment. I want to introduce this. Jewish law says that when it comes to monetary issues, if somebody confesses, we absolutely do put a verdict like that confession. If somebody says, if there's a contested situation, the person says, you know what, I confess, I admit, I stole the money, I owe $1,000. The court doesn't say, nope, we need the witnesses, we can't trust you. The court says, you admit it? No problem. Then you're guilty, and you have to pay up. And the court will rule you have to pay up based on confession. So the commentators ask, well, why confession here is okay by monetary matters, and it's not okay when it comes to corporal punishments? And the Rebbe says this explains it. Continue.
Like contrast, money is entrusted to human ownership. As the verse states, God has given the earth to man. Inasmuch as the individual has ownership over his own finances, the law with regard to money is that the defendant's confession is likened to 100 witnesses. By contrast, any matter that touches upon his body or soul, which remains the sole possession of God, are merely entrusted to man on loan. The individual is not an owner of them and therefore cannot incur lashes on the basis of his own testimony.
So the Rebbe says when it comes to money, God gave us the possessions that we have, God gave it to us. Now, it's still ultimately everything belongs to God, but as long as we have it, God says it's yours. Enjoy it, spend it, use it, whatever, it's yours. The body was never given to us as yours, do whatever you want with it. The body it's still mine. It's in your possession for right now, but it's not yours, it's still mine. Whereas money, possessions, are ours, legally. Therefore, if a person says, I owe $1,000, let's say they don't, but they can say it, and they're giving a gift. And so the court says, fine, done, now you have to give it to them. Because you admitted, you conceded, you confessed, you acknowledge, you promised to give this gift now, so now you're on the hook for it. Whether or not you actually owe it based on the court case itself, it's your money. You can decide that you have to that you want to give it, and we can decide that you have to give it away. When it comes to a body, it doesn't work like that. It's not yours to decide. So confession is inadmissible when it comes to bodily matters. Text 8b continues this notion. We're not going to read text 8b. So what's the point here? The big idea is that unlike what we might have thought, that our bodies are ours, and we could do whatever we want with it, no big deal, it's ours, we have autonomy, it's ours to do, ours to take, ours to abuse, etc. We have another item here, we have another perspective. And this perspective tells us, the Jewish perspective tells us, that life is not ours, not the soul, but also not the body. The body is not ours. And so we're entrusted to care for the body and the soul, and we don't have permission to harm. The Torah says, "V'nishmartem ma'od lenafsho seichem," and you shall guard your soul, guard your life, take care of your life. That's the only mandate we have. And when I say only mandate, that's the mandate we have, and the flip side is we are forbidden from doing anything to go against that and to harm that.
What if you're like an addict and you abuse yourself with alcohol or food or smoke?
Yeah, so look, human beings have challenges, and sometimes very strong challenges. And addiction is a disease. And it's something that many, many, many people struggle with. I would say that everyone struggles with addiction. You know, in different ways. Everyone's got their stuff that they struggle with that's unhealthy. For some people, it manifests on the outside. For some people, it manifests on the inside. Right? Some people are addicted to self-defeating thoughts and negative emotions that also self-harm and eat us up from the inside. So everyone's got something. The point of this is not to say we need to be perfect, but we need to recognize what our mandate is, and that is do everything in our power to maintain the good health, physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual health of ourselves. That's our mandate. Are we ever going to get it right and perfect? Of course not. Are we going to struggle? Absolutely. But where's the marker? What's the goal? The goal is to take care of not just the soul, spiritual health, but also the body, the physical health. That's the goal. To whatever extent. I mean, because we could always, unless you're eating organic and vegan and, farm to whatever, right? So where do we draw the line? The point is, the more that we're doing for our health, the better.
Well, I was thinking about
Yeah, listen, it's not.
sometimes
Yeah.
you can't help hurting your body.
Right, and that's the struggle.
You can't overcome the addiction.
Well, I think the other point is that our understanding changes with knowledge. So there was the time that nobody thought tobacco caused anything. And there was
Right.
the time that nobody thought, taking a hit to the head caused anything. And there was so, I mean, some of it,
Yeah.
all you can do is make your best effort, which I think is in part of your point.
I remember in the 80s, NFL Films used to produce funny football follies where guys would get hit and they would try to stand up and wobble and fall down, and it was played to like circus music.
Yeah.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
And now we know that you're watching somebody take years off their life, or have years of their life taken away, potentially,
And
God
a lot
forbid.
of kids' cartoons are very violent, you know.
Yeah.
people-
The old anvil falling, pianos falling.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
pretty mean.
Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner running off
Yeah.
cliffs. Anyway, okay, so let's now, for the final act of today's class, let's look at 3 understandings of wherein lies the holiness of the body. Because really the point of today's class is to have a different image. It's a body image. It's a different image of the body. The body is not just whatever. The body's holy. The body is God's. Wherein lies its holiness? 3 perspectives. Perspective number 1. The body is holy because it serves as the container for the soul. What makes the body special? What makes the body holy? Because there's something divine inside of it. And that makes the space itself, that makes the container, that makes the vessel also luminescent and shine. And that's a valid perspective. You know, it's like a glove fits the hand, and a body fits the soul. The soul fits inside the body. And because it fits inside the body itself is elevated to a holy place. Which is why we have in text 9 a very interesting law from the Code of Jewish Law once again, which is why we have the custom and the tradition to wash our hands in the morning when we wake up, known as Netilat Yadayim, or in Yiddish, Negelwasser, nail water. What's Negelwasser? What's Netilat Yadayim? We wash our hands. We actually alternate 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. For the morning. For bread, we do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But for the morning, we alternate 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And we pour. We have a cup. Take a cup of water, and pick it up in the left hand. Pour over the right, left, right, left, right, left. It's not as OCD as it looks, although it kind of is. But it's about cleansing the hands. What's the rationale behind it? So it says right here, text number 9. Let's read this inside. Adina Mal.
It is a rabbinic enactment to wash the hands with water each morning, not out of concern for hygiene prior to prayer, but for the reason that it is clearly stated in the Zohar, also mentioned in the Talmud, to remove the impure spirit that rests on the hands as a result of the soul departing from the body when it sleeps.
And that's all we need for right now. So what's the message? When we sleep, what happens? The soul a little bit. It says sleep is 1/60th of death. So what's death? Death is when the body and soul separate and each go their own way. So sleep is a little bit, it's a taste. So the soul elevates a little bit, ascends a little bit out of the body, and so the body is a little bit not as alive as it was. And when the body is not as alive as it was, because it has a little bit less soul, right? What happens in that vacuum? So the spirit of impurity sets in. Because impurity is always looking, the forces of impurity, known as klipa, are always looking, or tuma, are always looking to leech off of spaces where it's like, would be a good example. Yeah. Yeah, but also the space where there was light, they can come by and grab the leftovers, if you will. It's like a party went on, good food, a buffet, it's like, all right, we're going to come and clean it out afterwards. So that's, and they attach, the klipa, this force of impurity, attach themselves to the deadest part of the human being, which are the nails. Because you can cut your nails and you don't feel it, which means it's alive, it grows, the nails grow, they grow, so they're somewhat alive, but if they're not that alive, because if they were really alive, you would feel it. In other words, like the nerve, you don't, so it's the deadest part of the body, so that's where they really attach themselves to, and so that's why we wash our hands and make sure to wash off the nails before, we try to do it before we even walk too much in the house. So ideally, many people have the custom to have like a little bit of a bucket by the bed with a cup, and so you wake up, you say your modani, and you lean over and you wash your hands and you're good to go. Just don't step in it because then the whole thing spills over. I had a roommate in a camp when I was 13. He was 14. One night he refilled his Nagelwasser thing. He was on top of a bunk bed in our camp in Morristown. He must have done it like 5-6 times, because every time he got out of bed, he stepped in it again. And it wasn't on purpose. It was just one of those things. Anyway,
Maybe toenails.
right. No, but it wasn't even the morning. It was at night. It was like before he went to sleep. Whatever. Anyway, the point is that what does this teach us? This reminds us of how the body's holiness is somewhat dependent on the soul's in the first understanding. What makes the body holy? It's because the soul is inside of it. It's because it's a receptacle, and when the soul lifts out a little bit, the body's a little less holy and a little bit more susceptible to impurity. That's our first understanding of the holiness of the body. Why is the body holy? Because it houses the soul. The second understanding of the body's holiness is that why is the body holy? Because it does the mitzvot. Guess what? A soul can't do a mitzvah on its own. A soul feels like it wants to do the right thing. Oh, it loves compassion, empathy, kindness, love, wonderful. And it sees someone who's in need and it really wants to help out. Good luck, soul, giving that person $1 bill. How are you going to do it? Can't. If you're...
Isn't that the problem with angels?
Yep. Until they assume some sort of physical form, you can't do anything. So a soul can't do a mitzvah. A soul can't make a difference in this world without a body. Which means that the body is not just holy by virtue of its proximity to the soul, which was our first understanding, but it's holy by virtue of the fact that it does holy things. It literally does holy things, and without it, holy things couldn't happen. You couldn't do a mitzvah. There are no mitzvot, I don't believe. I think all 613 require a body. Even the mitzvah of loving the Lord your God, which is the most ethereal one, loving implies an emotion, which is a bodily sensation also. Right? So there's no mitzvah. Right? Visiting the sick, charity, I don't know, why am I stuck now after 2? Got another 611 to go. Whatever. There are no mitzvah. Lighting candles, eating matzah, shaking a lulav, building a sukkah, whatever it is. You can't do a mitzvah without a body. And so the second understanding of the holiness of the body is because the body is literally doing the mitzvah. The body is engaging with holiness, with God. Not just the soul, the body, and the soul can't do it without the body. Third explanation is, and this is the most daring one, all three are stated in various sources. Again, the first one is proximity, the second one is facilitating divine will. The third is the body is in its essence divine. Take a look at this magnificent text. I'll tell you which one it is in a moment. Text 13. I love this text. Text 13. I've totally lost track. David. Reb David. 209.
The soul is created for godly light. Now, God's light is a mere expression of God, whereas the body is created from God's very essence, which has no cause or precedent. The soul recognizes this quality of the body and wishes to receive this godly essence, and thus wishes to unite with the body and the animal soul and walk with it. The very will and reason of the soul dictates that it ought to be united with the body and not walk independently of it, but rather identify with it and walk together as one.
This is the most daring explanation, and it's the deepest, as found in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy. And this third explanation says it's not because of proximity, and it's not because the body does good things and facilitates the intention of the soul, but rather because in essence, the body stems from the essence of God, as opposed to the soul, which only stems from the light. And Kabbalah makes this distinction between essence and light. Essence is the source of light, and light is the outgrowth or the outcome of that source. So you have the core, and then you have the core's expression. And the expression is always a more diluted form of the... And oftentimes, in Kabbalah it says that revelation is light and essence is darkness. Because it's so deep you can't actually see it. It's so deep and mysterious and non-expressive that To the outsider, it looks opaque. It's a mystery. It's an enigma. But that's the essence. The essence lies in that enigmatic space. And so the body is coming.
Can you go back and say that one more time? Then essence is what, and light is what?
The
Light is the soul.
Light. Well, so yeah, that's what he says in text 13. Light is the soul, and essence is body. Or body stems from God's essence, whereas the soul stems from God's light. And light is lower than essence. Light. I'll give you another way of understanding this. Light identifies with source, essence identifies with itself.
Okay.
Light says, I came from the source. Source says, I am the source.
Okay, got it.
The soul says, I came from God. The body says, I am. The body is atheistic in nature. The human body says, I exist. The soul says, no, you come from somewhere, because the soul is light. The body that identifies with self, paradoxically, gets its consciousness from the essence of God, which also self-identifies as self-creating.
Got it.
Or self-created.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? It's the ego of body reflects perfectly the ego of the divine. Which is why I like to say that God is an atheist. Which is true. Because if you define atheist as someone who doesn't believe in anything higher and any cause, then that's great. God is an atheist. Right? Because there's nothing higher than God. And that mentality is found not in the soul, because the soul doesn't say I exist, the soul says God exists. That's not what God says. God doesn't say something higher exists. God says I exist. The soul says not I exist, something higher. It's not a pure reflection. So the soul comes from light. And light knows its source, and that it's only an outgrowth of the source, and the soul does the same thing. It's the body that comes from essence. Because the body that says I, the body, an animal soul that's ego-driven, paradoxically, or maybe not so paradoxically, is a pure reflection of the divine essence that doesn't talk about anything higher. That's not to say that therefore ego is fine, unchecked, and whatever, but understand its source is from a much higher place. It's almost like a mirror, so the things that are further away are further away. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And the things that are closer are closer. So the soul, which is closer, but it's not to the essence. The essence is reflected in that which is the furthest away from it. So the pure divine essence is reflected not in the soul, but in the body, which is the lowest. So what's the point? The body is special. Number one, it's not ours. It's not ours to wantonly do whatever we want with it. We don't have that permission. We have to take care of it. It's been entrusted to us. Think of that Rolls Royce or Ferrari, which is really for Ari.
Kia.
I'm just saying no one's realized that yet. Kia, right? We're being entrusted with it, and we have to take care of it. And it's holy. It's holy because of proximity. It's holy because of what it facilitates, and it's holy because fundamentally, it stems from the highest and most mysterious of divine places. And therefore, here are my two resolutions, or I'd like to suggest these two resolutions to think about. Number one, what can we do to take better care of our bodies? That's a very practical message. Number two, let's try to eliminate, and this is a theme that Rabbi Jacobson spoke about Monday night, and it seems to come up in many different circumstances. Let's try to eliminate the perceived divide between the spiritual and the material. Sometimes we think, well, when I'm in synagogue, I'm at a prayer service or at a class, I'll be Jewish, I'll be spiritual. But when I'm at work, I'm earning money, whatever, it's a mundane effort, so it's a different world. Who said? The body is holy. The body is divine. In the body is where the essence is. So you're involved in an activity that's very mundane. Mazel tov. Find the essence in that activity. Don't create this divide. It's an artificial divide. I don't know how we ever fell for it and why we still maintain this myth that there's a divide between material activities and spiritual activities. Whoever said? No. This is I'm just driving to work. I'm just eating. I'm just sleeping. I'm just doing something bodily. What do you mean just? The body's holy. The body's divine. The body's the highest level. So do it in a way that reflects its true origin. Baruch Hashem. So that's my proposed resolution. Number one, on a physical level, let's take care of our bodies, and on a deeper level, perhaps, or I don't want to rank things, but on another level, let's try to eliminate the divides between the meaningful activities in life and the mundane, and find meaning within everything, even that which we think might be perhaps mundane. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for Torah studies.
I think you had a question.